Okay, so what are the scales everybody knows?
Oh, let's see. Do you mean the donut scales?
Or start here.
Okay.
What's the formula?
Yeah.
Okay, so the numeric formula?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
1.
I guess.
781.
Okay. After that, what do we got?
Natural minor.
Yeah.
Natural minor, okay. Now, excuse me. We can fix that with green tea. Someone should tell her that.
How Hillary Clinton is always coughing in her speeches.
On her last few speeches, she has bubonic plague.
Plague.
No,
Oh, man.
Yeah.
she has walking pneumonia.
I heard it on Fox News.
Pneumonia. I've had pneumonia before, and you get a cough, it lasts for months.
Yeah, no, I had
Have you had
pneumonia last
pneumonia
year.
when
I
you were
had that cough for
72?
like 4 months straight
All
up.
right, and not
Yeah.
in your
I'm like,
blood.
have you had pneumonia when you were 72 and on the campaign trail? Because I think that might be a little bit different.
When my
72.
grandmother
She needs to be laying
I don't
down
know how old she
somewhere.
is.
Pneumonia is not a rocket
She's
experience.
old enough. Probably
Well, you
probably
know,
been doing like 20,
all the
20
travel,
days,
jet
for like
lag
3
from
years.
city to city takes a toll on you
That makes
also.
sense, yeah.
But anyway, natural minor, why did you go there? What was that, say your go-to scale like that?
I mean, do you
Used
want
to.
the other forms too, or what's?
Well, I just see, everybody thinks in a different way. Like for me, my first go-to is to modify the major scale by 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go to melodic.
That's because I'm
I
a
go to
guitar
natural.
player, and that's how I learned it, because I was trying to figure it out on my own, and I was just grappling with this major minor concept for when I was a teenager, and I couldn't really put my finger on it until finally I figured out, well, if you take major and you modify it by 1, you get melodic minor.
Yeah, and if you modify
Then all the
it by 2,
academics would argue with me, say, well, no, that's only for the ascending form, you know that, right?
Well, I think it's because I learned natural minor after major, then harmonic, then
Yeah.
melodic. So that's probably why I thought that.
See, I'm
So you
I'm
did-
with you. I went
you
like
just did a
slight
shuffle
changes.
step.
Yeah.
Because you went from 2 modifications, no, 3 modifications.
3, yeah.
To 2 to 1, so that's
Yes.
the shuffle step method.
Yeah.
Okay, so natural minor, what's the formula, Garrison?
1, 2, flat, 3, 4, 5, flat. Oh, natural minor. It's flat 6, flat 7.
Yeah. No, you were right.
Yeah, I went melodic. I did the same thing you did. I went
Okay,
melodic.
we're doing the shuffle step.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the next one?
I guess we'll go harmonic.
I guess, yeah.
Flat 3 and flat
We'll
6.
follow the shuffle step.
We got flat. The shuffle.
Flat 3.
Flat 3.
Flat,
Flat 3.
flat 7.
Flat
Flat
6.
six.
Oh, flat
Six.
6, sorry.
This is not Dorian.
Normal. It's
Seven.
it's just a 7. Yeah.
1.
Okay.
And then melodic minor.
Melodic should just be flat 3.
Okay, now,
Do you
let's
want to
keep
do the other
going.
ones.
Yeah.
Is it Hungarian that's next with the flat 4? Or
No,
flat
sharp
5?
4.
Sharp 4, excuse me.
It's a harmonic minor with a sharp 4. So that
So
one,
That one would be a 1, 2, flat 3. Oh, that's right, that's the chart. Flat 3, sharp 4, 5, flat 6, 7.
okay, then, even more creepy than this.
Romanian?
Yeah, it has more than one name, and I've seen Romanian more often than the other names, so we're using Romanian as the name because I've seen it more often, but there's so many names for this type scale.
What?
Like wood.
Yeah, what other names does it have?
If you go to,
Chechnyan minor.
jazzbooks.com,
Alright.
there's a free PDF file called Scale Syllabus up there.
Scale what?
Syllabus.
Syllabus.
And it has almost every single one that's ever been used. That's a free file, so that has all the names of all of them. And then There's a guy,
Use the Potter more in a second.
Wow, that's such a name. I love it. I'm sorry, is that Cadman or Kaelman?
Cadman.
Sorry.
Okay. So this has the free scale syllabus. These are authors of 3 books that have
Joe
Joe Charupakorn.
Charupakorn.
He's out of Manhattan, and he teaches at the Manhattan School of Music. And he's really in the know with lots of different scales. He's got 2 books, one on scales, one on chords. And then Adam Cadman's got this thing called the Guitar Grimoire, and it's like an encyclopedia of different scales.
Okay.
And then Mill Bay came out with theirs, written by William Bay. Mill Bay is the company and the father of the whole family, and I don't know if he's still alive, but William Bay came out with this scale encyclopedia. And I haven't seen any other sources that have so many in them. You also have Slominski's book, but he doesn't really have an encyclopedia of scales as much as he has an encyclopedia of different melodic patterns.
Okay.
Even though it's called an encyclopedia of scales and melodic patterns, he has more melodic pattern ideas than he does different scales. But these guys have all those scales listed if you want. Their guitar, though, there are some for piano, but I have to talk to Reed about it. I have to ask Reed what those books are.
Okay.
He knows more than me about piano. Okay. So what was Romanian minor? 1,
Flat 2,
flat 2,
flat 3,
flat 3,
4.
sharp 4.
Oh, sharp 4, 5.
So that's 6.
That's 6,
So that's taking it pretty far out there, right?
Yeah.
that's kind.
Okay.
It's tight, honestly.
What else can we do with this? We've modified the 2, we've modified the 3, we've modified the 4. If we modify the 5, if we lower it, it becomes a sharp 4. If we raise it, it becomes a flat 6. We can
We could flat
take the
7.
7 and put a flat 7 in there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would that sound like?
It'll.
Freaky.
I've never heard
Yeah,
that.
weird.
Weird, huh?
I'm down.
But you see these guys you can derive that scale out of the Romanian minor. Okay, but that's the direction that things go if you're doing incrementally. Now, Romanian minor is on the first page of the midterm in harmony 4.
Say that again?
Romanian minor scales on it's the first question on the midterm in harmony 4, very first question.
Is
And I
the
tell
Romanian-
people that a semester in advance. I tell them that at the end of the semester. I tell them that at the beginning of harmony 4. And then I hand out the
Still
midterm
gonna
event,
forget.
and everybody gets it wrong. They can't remember it.
Challenge accepted.
So it's just like in fundamentals and music theory 1, everybody always gets a whole tone scale wrong. Always. Okay. So now, what do? We got a flat 3, flat 6, flat 3, flat 6, flat 7.
Yeah. Flat 3, flat 6, sharp 4. Flat 2, flat 3, sharp 4, flat 6.
Yeah. Okay. So that's it going by incrementally, right?
Yeah, that's what makes sense.
Okay. So now, what if you want to go beyond those Romanian and Hungarian minor scales into some pretty crazy sounding stuff that they use in jazz now? Where do we get those from?
Probably modes and variations.
Almost. You start with this.
Got it.
Boston scale. 12-tone scale.
Yeah, so that's a 12-tone scale, right? What's the smallest increment of the intervals in the 12-tone scale? Half step, right? So that's a symmetrical scale because it's all half steps, right? So then the whole tone scale is what? Every other number,
Yeah,
right?
so it's 6-tone scale.
Okay, good. So we have that, then we have this. That's your whole tone scale, right? So then you take, this is 1. This is 1 plus 1. What's this one?
1 plus 1
3 half steps. That's the next step. That's the next increment.
So a minor third scale with only
Third
4 notes?
scale. So what's a minor third scale?
Well, that would be a 1, flat 3.
C, D sharp, right? F sharp, right? A, C, right? Or what we want to do is we want to use the correct inharmonic equivalents, right?
Yes.
Okay, so there's
Why would
our
that be
4-note
correct?
scale of minor thirds, right?
No, I have a question.
Oh,
Why would that be more correct than the sharps?
Why?
Yeah.
What does it spell?
Oh, okay. It spells the chord. Okay.
It's not really more correct. You know? It's like when you're overweight, they hand you a menu and you say, "What would you like to order, sir?" And you just look at it and go, "Yeah."
Everything.
Why you gotta drag me like that? I'm a
He
good
said,
person.
yeah.
Look who's wearing boots.
Always.
Every
I
day, all
have a
day.
teaching preschool tonight and I don't have time to go home.
You know what? I was writing when you did the third
I'm hella
one.
excited about it
So
actually.
C
I
to
love
E, so what's that?
preschool is
Increments of a third?
Like I love
No,
I love
increments
of a
it.
third.
If I could get a good
3 half
teaching
steps.
preschool.
3 half
forever.
steps? Okay.
All I know for absolute certain is that I want to work with little kids because I'm good at it. Little kids well.
So we'll teach them all musicology.
Yeah, I'm gonna teach all of the small children ethnomusicology.
Dude, yes.
Yes.
Like, you realize just.
3 half steps. So
I'm
one
gonna
All the
teach them
small
how
children
white
of the
people have
world.
stolen everything ever in music.
Very
And their parents are gonna yell at me, and I'm gonna say, "Tough titties." I'm teaching.
Okay.
You're gonna say.
You gotta
Yeah, that's
teach
what I'm
yourself to,
saying.
you gotta teach yourself to curb the language in front of classes. It's like a bad habit you get into. I mean, I'm the worst.
Yeah,
when
tough
I'm around
memories.
my friends, you should hear the conversations. It's like a bunch of drunken sailors. You actually are, but anyway, that's besides the case, right?
Graduate class?
Oh, my friends are crazy. Imagine growing up in the 60s and 70s, being a musician, what kind of friends you would have.
Awesome friends.
Yeah. All right. I have really valuable friends, though.
That's good.
Like if my car breaks down in the middle of the Mojave Desert out in the middle of 3 o'clock in the morning, I know I can call a couple
Nice.
people and they'll show up and
That's
come get
fucking
me.
awesome.
That is.
All right. So we got scale minor thirds, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you see how numerically it's really a symmetrical scale, like a chromatic, whole tone, and what do we call this, Lisa? What's the big argument over this? Did we talk about this before?
We
No,
did,
Did
but.
we?
You
It's a
may have
huge-
in theory 1 or 2, but
Like
I don't think we
32.
talked about it in.
I don't think we've talked about it
We
here.
talked about
It's
it
a
in
huge,
two.
huge argument among
Yeah.
guitar players on YouTube, especially heavy metal guitar players. This is actually an arpeggio, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But since it's stepwise in minor thirds, it's close enough to be called a scale too.
Yeah.
It's scalar, so it's a scale, and it's also an arpeggio.
Yeah.
And if you stack it up, what kind of chord does it form?
A diminished.
It does.
A diminished.
Yeah,
right?
it's
Yeah.
diminished.
Yeah, it's a
I
diminished.
was gonna say 6, but also diminished.
Yeah. No.
I'm thinking like down the neck, like how that's happening.
So right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do we want to call this scale?
C diminished 7 scale.
No, just a
Just a
diminished
diminished
scale.
seventh scale.
I remember that now.
Diminished 7 scale?
Yeah.
Or short for C diminished scale, right?
Only C.
Well, if it's in C.
Yeah. C diminished scale.
Okay.
So now, I'm leading you into a false sense of security here.
That sounds wrong to me.
C diminished scale. All right. So what do we got here? We got 12 notes, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You call it a 4-note scale.
We got, how many notes here?
6.
Six. And how many notes here?
4.
Do they call it a 4-note scale? Because that's literally just a chord.
There's the argument.
Arpeggio, yeah.
Arpeggio, chord scale. They're all grouped into the same category.
Diminished
Even
arpeggiatic.
because the scale tones are only a minor third apart. They're not.
Yeah.
Now, what if I went further than that? What if I went like this?
A major third
Then we
scale?
would just be like.
Yeah.
That's literally just a chord.
Yeah.
I mean,
You
you could make the argument that all of these are
That's
just
just an arpeggio.
Whoa.
What?
You could make the argument if you wanted to be a dick about it that all of these are just chords, to be fair. I'm just kind of bringing that
What's that? That's,
12 times.
up. That's just a C augmented.
isn't that just a duplication of this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we call that a redundancy, right?
Sure.
So this is kind of like, it's used as an arpeggio, but as a scale, the intervals are considered to be a little bit too far to be a scale because it's a major third. And we cover that with the whole tone scale. That's inside the whole tone scale. Okay, so this is about the limit as far as practical scales. These three. Okay.
I don't know how practical a 4-note scale is.
Well. Most of the
Okay, math wizards.
3,
Your math.
2,
Nobody? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well, what?
There's 12, but then there's 2 and
That's
3.
the top one is 12.
There's 12, 2.
Yeah. Did you mean 12 divided by 12? Because you wanted
No.
1, 2, 3?
So for the chromatic scale, there's 12 chromatic scales, right?
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay.
Got
For the
it.
whole tone scale,
There's 2.
there's
There's
2
two,
whole tone
And there's
scales.
3, 4.
This is the key concept. There's 2 whole tone scales here, right? Now, for the diminished scale, there's 3, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
3 separate scales, and they don't overlap, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So
It's
now,
not 12 divided by 12.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I think there is kind of
What-
only
what-
one whole tone scale.
No, there's
Six?
Sorry,
No,
half-tone
what,
scale.
what she means
Yeah.
is that all scales are in the chromatic scale. So
The-
wouldn't
the
there just
top
be one?
Wouldn't it be 12 divided by 12 and then equal 1?
Because there's only one half-tone
divided by
scale.
12, yeah.
Because, yeah.
That's
That's
there's
why we have
only-
Lisa here.
It's only really one
She
chromatic
fights off my
scale.
Alzheimer's.
12 divided by 12 equals 12.
12. Yeah.
12 divided by 12 is 1.
I teach preschool.
But
You do.
12
They don't
divided by
need that.
12 is 12.
That's all that matters.
we want how many scales there are.
We
We
have
want
12
no, we want the other way around.
oranges.
12 divided by 1.
Then again, if you're teaching them
You have
division.
12 small oranges. I'm
Cool.
teaching preschool
There you go.
division.
All right.
I don't want
My point is focusing on this scale here.
Yes.
Okay, so we got this minor thirds, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so. Okay, so those 2 scales are the way out of, like, if you wanted to tweak Romanian minor even further, you could by putting a flat 7 in it, but we've modified all 7 tones in those scales to the point where now when you're using them, the modifications have maxed out.
Yeah.
So now we gotta have an 8-tone scale. Okay, so these are the 2 8-tone scales,
I think.
okay? So now, this is the argument that I get is, everybody calls this one the diminished scale. And I go, no, there's 2 of these. There's a diminished 8 note and a dominant 8 note. And people just argue to the death on YouTube over, there's like thousands of comments about it, telling me I don't know what I'm talking about. You know, diminished scale, you're talking about diminished arpeggio, not diminished scale. I'm like, no, qualify that. The 4-note scale is an arpeggio slash chord slash scale,
Yeah,
right?
and I guess it
There's
does
a
count.
macro harmony, which can be considered a scale because it's scalar. What does the word scale come from? La scala, what does that mean in Italian? You know Italian forms.
I don't know
Staircase.
Italian ever.
Yeah, stairs.
Stairs, see? I told you, what Italian? See? Somebody knows
Lisa
Italian.
knows Italian.
Lisa
This is
knows
why we
Italian.
keep her. I feel like we say a lot
Yes,
of
I
reasons
know
why we
we
keep
keep
you.
What was this? It's like raise your hand twice or what?
Definitely.
This is why we
Definitely.
keep her. It could be
Okay. You guys getting this?
anything.
Yeah.
Half step, whole step scale? Whole step, half step scale. Where would you use where would you use these scales, man? Let me see your guitar.
Well, the easy answer is coming
Let me see
up.
your guitar.
You want it?
Is it tuned normal?
Yeah, it's just standard.
All right, so if you have an E7 sharp 9 chord, that's an altered 5 chord. You can play.
Yeah. So the easy place to use those scales is over the chord from which they're derived.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're used a lot in jazz, okay? Over altered dominant chords.
Makes sense to me.
It sounded like something in the Latin family to me. It didn't sound like
Probably,
that.
yeah, they probably, all those Latin jazz guitarists knew all, like, Black Orpheus is a classic tune,
Yeah.
you know? And they use those kinds of scales in this improvisation. You've heard it
Love
many
that
times.
fucking movie.
But that's what it is these half-step, whole-step scales. Okay, so now, going back to the minor third scale,
What?
does it make sense to you, Terry?
Yes.
Okay. So, the dominant 8 note, because it's got a flat 7 in it,
Okay.
and we know that because the next note is a whole step below the root, it's a flat 7, right? And the diminished 8 note scale,
Has a natural 7 and a natural 6.
yeah.
Okay. That's
good.
easy.
All right.
So not to ask the cliche college question, but how will something like that be presented to us on a test? Will it be like write out an 8-note dominant or diminished scale, or identify an 8-note dominant or diminished scale?
There's like 14 different angles you could hit somebody with a question, you know, I mean,
Okay.
in the past, identify.
Okay.
And there's been certain pieces of music that you have to identify what scale it is. And there's
Yeah.
one by the telltale composer, Scriabin. Once you see that name, you go, ha 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 ha! I know he's using a symmetrical scale,
Yeah.
right? So those are some clues, you know, like the name of the composer, the discussion of his stuff, you know, in class, you know. Scriabin uses scale. Do you know what? Does anybody know what Scriabin called it?
A
Just me.
symmetrical scale.
The triple scale. He called it the octatonic scale.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. It sounds like a car.
And the chord he built up from that scale, he called it the mystic chord.
Oh!
I remember.
I've had, yeah. That sounds a lot more familiar to me than 8-tone dominant and diminished scale.
Well, you see, about the thing about these names, you know. Sorry, Regan. These names are like, all the names of chords have been agreed upon in the common practice period. You know, your inversions and your triads, your 6, your 6/4, your 6/5, the 4/3, and the 4/2. That's been agreed upon for 300 years, right?
Yeah.
But all the stuff that's coming out in the past 100 years, people have different names for stuff, right? Let's talk about the modes. Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian,
Lydian,
Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian, Ionian, right? Okay, so
I
now,
panicked for a second.
there's seven modes off the major scale, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's take one step further.
2 modes off the minor.
Well, the minor scale's a mode off the major scale.
Well, because I think of some of the modes as being off of the minor scale already.
So melodic minor should have 7 modes too, right?
Okay.
Why are you gonna fuck me up like this? Do those have fancy Greek names?
That's the point. Every jazz book I've ever seen has different names for all the melodic minor modes.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
The enigmatic scale, the Etruscan scale, all these names I've seen in dozens of different jazz books. My teacher, Dick Grove, out in LA, he just called something the 5th mode of the melodic minor scale.
Okay.
5th mode of the harmonic minor scale.
Got it.
Okay? Now, let me see your guitar again.
So,
The harmonic minor scale, if you go to the 5th mode, here's A harmonic minor, right? You got okay, that's mode 1 of harmonic minor, right?
okay.
What's the 5th of A?
E.
E. So if we start the A harmonic minor scale from E, where I went to school at Dick Grove, he would call it the 5th mode of the harmonic minor scale. But all these metal guys, they call it Phrygian major. And then jazz guys call it gypsy major, gypsy scale. Here's what it sounds like. If you're starting on E,
That's racist.
you've got the A harmonic minor scale with E as the root. So it's the same scale, but starting on the 5th mode, you can call whatever name you want. I've seen it called a dozen different names.
So, okay, so if I started melodic minor, like a standard A melodic minor, but I started it on D, that would be the 4th mode of A melodic minor.
Yeah, 4th mode of A melodic minor. That's my preference.
That makes a lot more sense to me than calling it
Yeah.
gypsy
Yeah.
scale or
Oh, they have so
Phrygian
many
major.
names. So the naming conventions have been bantered across, back and forth, from city to city almost, right? But Dick Grove always just called it, it's the 5th mode of melodic minor scale, and you take a cigarette, just walk out of the room. You don't know that, you know? He didn't care much for esoteric names. He called them hippie names. He was super old school. Okay. You know,
does the same hold true for harmonic and natural and
well, let's take a look
Hungarian
at
and
this
Romanian?
first one. We got our mode here, right? We got our first mode, whole step, half step, whole step, right? Then whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, right? So what if we start from 2? We call that 1, we go half step,
Full step, full step, full step, full step.
so it'd be a flat 2, right?
Yeah.
3 to 4 would be a whole step, so it would be a flat 3. And then 4 to 5 would be a whole step, right? So you go whole step, whole step. Then 5 to 6 would be a whole step. 6 to 7. And then would be a half step from 6. So you'd want flat 7. And then to 1, right? So what kind of scale is that? 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7, 1. What's our chord there?
It's not B minor 7.
A minor 7, but with a flat 2 in the scale, right?
Okay.
So that's a different
That mode exists.
Now, well, yes, the second mode of melodic minor scale.
No, I
See
mean,
what I'm
I
saying?
feel like we had already learned it.
So some books would call that, you know, the Etruscan mode.
Okay.
Some books would call that the Egyptian major. No, the Egyptian minor. I've seen so many names for that, right? But prefer that you can remember it easier if you just call it the second mode of melodic minor.
Yeah.
Okay. Like if you have a G7, if you have a G7 sharp 5 chord, let's do that.
Okay.
Okay. What is the formula for that chord?
It's a 1-3 sharp 5 flat 7.
Okay, so what a lot of jazz guys like to do is the immediate go-to for that chord is to go a half step above and play a melodic minor scale. So it's the 7th mode of A flat melodic minor. So starting here.
I don't think I followed you as well. I want to do that last section.
I think what he's saying is because they're not just playing it, they're playing around with it.
Yeah, no, I'm getting that. I didn't see how we got got it. I wasn't thinking. And, for some reason, I wasn't thinking A flat. I was thinking A. I was not there with you.
It's a G natural. It's an A minor scale. We have is F natural too.
A flat minor.
Okay, so A flat melodic minor, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the 7th mode starts on G, right?
Okay.
So if you start on G and use the same notes, you got G, A flat, B flat, C flat, D flat, E flat, F, right?
So it's
So you got A flat. Well, let's see your target.
I'm just gonna grab this one.
Should we just leave the guitar at
yeah,
the
it's probably better.
So it is.
So that's half step, half step, half step.
So here's your G7 sharp 5 chord, right?
Yeah.
And here's your A flat melodic minor. So the scale fits over the chord because it produces the necessary accidentals.
Yeah. It's got the right sound. It's just starting on the 7 and
Should I leave
7
this
1.
here? Should I leave it here?
Yeah, no, you're fine.
So, you know, people call that the low green flat 2, dominant 7 flat 2 scale, whatever
Why
name.
wouldn't you just call it the 7th mode of A flat melodic?
That was the point that Dick Grove had
Yeah.
years and years ago, 35 years ago. Okay, so 40 years ago. All right. So there's 7 modes off the melodic minor and there's 7 modes off the harmonic minor, right? So that means there's 7 modes off the Hungarian minor
And off of the Romanian minor.
and there's 7 modes off the Romanian minor. So it gets to be pretty unwieldy and unmanageable, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we use. We just call it the 5th mode of harmonic minor.
And that's
7th
without
mode.
Because I
quarter
can't remember
tones.
so many
Huh?
names.
And that's without quarter tones. So once you get into those, you have like.
Yeah, that's a whole nother realm, quarter tones. Oh, yeah. Now, there are certain scales that are go-to scales for jazz guys. Like everybody knows, if you play jazz, everybody knows what a Lydian flat 7 is. That's a go-to scale, but it's one of the modes of melodic minor.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So what do we got here? For the for the seventh mode, we got a 1, what?
Flat.
Flat 2, yeah. Flat 3,
Flat four.
Flat 4.
flat 4, was that, or 3? Okay.
No, it was, yeah, that's
That'd be a 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
Flat 5, or sharp 4, right? And then a flat 6, and a flat 7, right? So here's your, they call that a sharp 5 there too, right? So there's your chord outline for that G7 sharp 5, flat 6 or sharp 5, okay? You can substitute with a flat 5. A flat 5 and a flat 6 are a whole step away from each other.
yeah.
So since they're a whole step away from each other, you can substitute one note for the other in most jazz chords, depending upon the context of what came before and what came after. But anyway, my point is, the melodic minor scale has a mode from each node, and there's lots of names that people call these modes, okay? I'm going to stick with the old school Digro way to say the third mode of melodic minor, the fourth mode. We're not really, that's stuff we don't really get into in Harmony 3 though. It's Harmony 4. Not even really in Harmony 4 because that's like more for improvisation classes. Different modes over different scales. When you're studying the works of major composers in the common practice area, they didn't really use too many of those kinds of scales. But however, now let's go back to this scale. Okay. What do we got there?
The 4-tone scale or the
C
C
diminished 7, right? So now, that by itself is used in common practice music. Diminished 7th chord has been used a lot by Bach. But Bach did something else with it, and that really hasn't been duplicated since, which I thought was pretty unique. Okay, if you take any note, you take any note of a diminished 7 chord, any note, any one note in the chord, and you lower it by 1/2 step, while the other 3 notes remain intact, that lowered note then becomes the root of a dominant 7. Okay. So if you have C, E flat, G flat, B, if you don't, let's do the enharmonic spelling now. So we got B, D sharp, F sharp, A, right?
Yeah. You're dominant.
See how that works?
Yeah.
So now if you got C diminished 7 again, now we want to lower the E flat. So if you got C, E double flat, G flat, B double flat, what's the enharmonic spelling?
D. Yeah, D.
D,
F. Still good.
F sharp,
F sharp. Yeah.
A, C, right?
Mhm.
That's really tight.
Okay, then take C diminished 7 again.
That's a cool little trick. Yeah.
And take the G flat. See, here's our modified notes. We got this one,
Let's have
and here we have C, E flat,
The E.
flat, C, E flat, double flat. And here we have the C diminished 7, then we have this one, we're lowering the 5th, so the enharmonic spelling is going to be what? G double flat is F sharp,
F.
F,
Yeah, it's not F sharp, it's just F.
A,
A
C.
natural.
C,
C.
E, E flat, right? So then we got this one here, C,
If you lower the double flat.
So
A flat, B double flat,
Would be
flat.
B triple flat,
B
Yeah,
triple,
so that would be
yeah,
A flat.
A flat.
A flat, right?
So A flat. So A flat, C,
E flat.
G flat. A flat tone.
Okay, so that's the first thing that was done that people didn't really grasp until way later on when he was doing that. He was taking, because there's a lot of compositions, especially chromatic fantasy and fugue, where there were flurries of seemingly unrelated dominant seventh chords, right? And everybody always called them the 5 of 5, the 5 of 7, the 5 of this, the 5 of that. Everybody's always tracing it down to diatonic harmony. Whereas that diatonic harmony during Bach's time wasn't developed
Yeah.
yet. It wasn't a school yet. So he was pretty much free from thinking that way in terms of Roman numeral chords. So he experimented by taking diminished chords. Take a diminished chord, you lower the root by one, you get a dominant chord. Oh, here's a new key. Da, da, da. Okay, so we determined that if you have a C diminished 7 chord, okay, the next note, the note is going to be C, E flat, G flat, and then B double flat, right? That's a C diminished 7 chord, right? So the C diminished 7 chord has those notes in it, right? And the next note in the chord is going to be E flat, right? You can start, since it's a symmetrical scale, like this. C, right? C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E flat, right? There's your C, E flat, G flat, B double flat, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so there's your C diminished 7, right? If I start on E flat, so it's going to be the same thing.
Yeah,
E flat, G flat,
diminished 7.
B double flat, C, or E flat, G flat, A, right?
Yeah.
C, right? So the E flat diminished 7 chord, E flat, G flat, B double flat, right?
Let's see.
E, G, B, D, right? C, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The G flat diminished 7 chord would be D flat, right? D double flat. Flat, right? There we go. G flat, B flat, D double flat, G flat, F flat. Would be the correct spelling of that, right? For those notes. So there's 4 chords that are not overlapped, but they all contain the same notes, right? So when you're talking about C diminished 7, the next note in the chord can be a root of that diminished 7. The next note can be a root. So these 4 notes are all the same. They're the same notes, right? For all 4 chords. C diminished 7 has the same notes in it as E flat diminished 7, same notes as G flat diminished 7, same notes as B double flat diminished 7, right? Okay, so that means that for this one chord, you can lower any one of the notes and get 4 dominant 7th chords, right?
Yeah.
So that's true with this chord too, right? Same with this chord, same with this chord. But it's not true for this chord here, D flat. D flat produces another 4 dominant 7th chords.
Yeah.
And then D produces another 4 dominant 7th chords.
But that formula still holds true for those groups of 4.
Right.
Okay.
So the point is between this note and the next note in the chord, there are available 12 dominant seventh chords immediately physically accessible by modifying one note of the diminished chords.
Yeah.
So if there's 3 diminished chords between each diminished chord, that means there's 12 dominant seventh chords. And that's where these chords came from, these dominant sevenths, is the fact that you can jump into this dominant seventh, but he's only going from C diminished to C sharp diminished and lowering one of the notes. And that's where it came from. And that was revisited later, like in the 60s, with jazz guys doing that stuff. Yeah, we're out of time, but we'll continue on in the opposite direction. If you take any note of the diminished seventh chord and raise it up a half step, that becomes the flat 7 of a minor 7 flat 5 chord, or half diminished chord.
Okay.
So the juxtapose diminished, half diminished, and dominant sevenths, they're all inside Bach's music in a random way, a seemingly random way, but there's really a logic to it. And I think it's all based on these diminished chords.
Gotcha. That's really tight.
I presented this as like a thesis demo in grad school a couple years ago, and they were all kind of blown away by the idea. They had never thought of it.
Low key, I'm kind of blown away by it too. Just the pure.
Well, that's
mathematics
because
of
I'm
it.
coming from a jazz theory background, looking at common practice music.
Yeah.
Seeing,
looking
well,
at how Bach
there
had
was,
his influence.
Bach didn't use common practice Roman numerals. He was
Yeah.
before that, so he wasn't locked into that. He wasn't thinking of that. He was just thinking of
What
the
can
sound
I-
of it
pitch
and
can
what
I
he could
do?
do with each chord. Like Chopin did that too. Chopin would modify chords, and people can theorize anything they want about Chopin, but I think he was on the same track as what Bach was doing.
Good shit.
All right, so Wednesday, let's do Wednesday.
Okay.
We're gonna start the workbook.
Yeah, I have guitar.